Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Vindraya Tapatra Nidra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Pravanapatijataya Todravitrekapanaya Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gitamritamduhe Namaha Sarvopanishadhogaha Doka Paranandanaha Partho Vassasutir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahata Vasudeva Sudam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Bhishma Drona Tata Jayadratha Jala Gandharani Lotpala Shalyagrahati Kripena Vahani Karnena Vela Kula Ashvatthama Vikarna Gora Makara Duryodhana Vartini Sotirna Kalupanda Vairananadi Kaivartaka Keshava Parasharya Vachasarojamamalam Gitartha Gandolkatam Nanakyanakakesaram Harikatha Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Sajjana Shatpadairaharaha Yeviyamanam Buddha Bhudya Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradvansina Shreyase Mukam Karoti Vacharam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Paramanandamadhavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Tunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanisadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Jnana Vastita Tadyatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyam Tam Navidussurasuragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha Yasyam Navidussuragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha.
piece of paper, it's 934.
74.
Page 74 in the book.
74.
That book, it's verse 934. Oh.
Come a little bit this side. So, yeah. One person move. If both move, the same problem. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Manmana bhava madbhaktaha madhyaji man namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktvaivam Atmanam matparayanaha Manmana bhava madbhaktaha Madhyaji man namaskuru Mame vaishyasi yuktvaivam Atmanam matparayanaha All together. Manmana bhava madbhaktaha Madhyaji man namaskuru Mame vaishyasi yuktvaivam Atmanam matparayanaha. We still have a little ways to get to this. I thought we'll warm up by chanting it. Huh? Yeah, we still have time. I'm not, we'll do it. Don't worry. We are already doing it. But somehow that mental satisfaction is not there until actually one gets into the verse. So I thought I'll chant it so that everybody can focus. Yeah? So yesterday we saw that there is the self-ignorance in the form of avarana. Avarana means the mistake, the self-ignorance that leads to the mistake of identifying with a single body, mind, sense complex to the exclusion of anything else. I am as good as this body. Fat, thin, short, tall, sick, well, this is as good as it is. I'm as good as the mind. Angry, restless, calm, upset, sick, mentally, so many things, all these things. And then I'm as good as the senses. I'm short-sighted. This is identification with the senses. Yeah. I'm nearsighted. These people say this. I can only see things close, Far away, nothing I can see. Like this, people say, I'm long-sighted, short-sighted, I'm deaf. People say that. And in Sanskrit, there is a very nice expression. Kanoham, kanaha, means I can only see with one eye. No other language. There's a word for that. So this is the glory of the inglorious jiva, that this complete identification with everything that is limited. In fact, the jiva makes a beeline for these limitations, while actually wanting to be whole. It's a very sad thing, It's like a small child who is, wanting to sleep but doesn't know that, and instead jumps around and eats sugar and gets more tired. This is how the jiva is. The jiva means self-sabotage. As soon as it comes out of the womb, the sabotaging starts. Self-sabotage. This is the alienation. Do you see this? This is the alienation. Perhaps when one is in the womb, one is still like, in the program of Bhagavan, because the mind is yet to develop, the brain is yet to develop, and the baby is just how it is. Whatever the mother does, the baby says, okay, I have to just do this. The baby does not say, don't smoke. It does not put a no smoking sign on the stomach. No drinking, no smoking. It doesn't do that. It just, however it is, it just takes everything because it's within the programming. It is connected to the source, the immediate source, which is the mother, no matter how dysfunctional that source may be behaving. And it is connected to also the source, which is the total, because it is within the purview of the law of embryonic development, considering how things are in each particular situation. It is within the law of the karmic development of this particular baby. It is within the law. If the baby doesn't survive, that is also within the law. If it survives, that is also within the law. The law means it is absolute. It is everything. And that means what? That this law, whenever we use the word law, there is a sense of infallibility there. Otherwise you cannot study it. You cannot predict. Gravity you can study only because it is constant. It is predictable. So that is how, and the law does not make itself. There is an intelligence behind this creation. That is what we call chit, bhati, jnanam, whatever word you use. That intelligence, whenever we talk about knowledge, that it takes to make this universe what it is, the knowledge has to rest in a being, right? You cannot just have knowledge by itself floating around. It is wielded, it is, it is manifest in the form of this creation, in the form of this manifestation actually. Everything from unmanifest to manifest. Like even in the kernel of the seed, the entire tree is present. The whole tree is present in the seed of the orange. Where? Let's cut it and look. Do you see a baby tree when you open the seed? Do you see a tiny microscopic oranges growing on that tree? And even tinier, seeds inside those oranges? No. What do you see? Nothing. But yet that seed contains all the knowledge needed for the tree to grow exactly according to its karmic trajectory. It is just so fascinating. That is what it is, from unmanifest, the seed, which is the unmanifest form of the tree, to manifest, and then back to seed again, unmanifest. The whole creation is like that. Everything, comes from a source and then returns back to the source, whether that source is relative or absolute. That's what it is. So this baby jiva, as long as it's in the womb, it perhaps is the only time it felt safe. The moment it comes out, troubled days are ahead. We'll keep saying that. Troubled days are ahead. Why? Because it's an individual with a social security number. Long 10 digits for this small little chili pepper sized baby, Can't even turn over. Even an apple turnover is better because it has turned over, And this baby is just helpless, needing, some adult for everything. It cannot flip. It cannot say, I'm hungry. It cannot say, I'm really angry with you right now. You're a very bad parent. You should go to parenting school. Maybe it wants to say that, but it cannot. And you should have never had children. What were you thinking? It wants to perhaps say all those things, but it doesn't know how. It cannot articulate the discomfort it feels. For all the same cry, the parents have to just sort of think, okay, what is this cry now? Can't be for food, can't be for sleep, so must be having colic. This is through what is that? What we call parishesha nyaya, the process of elimination, that which is left over. This is leftover nyaya. This is how it is. It's an individual. What kind of an individual? But it has free will. The 6-month-old is asked, honey, what will you have for breakfast? These are the modern times. It cannot even say milk, but it is asked anyway. This is what the whole thing is. So this helplessness is what constitutes the jiva. This is what it is. I am in this vast scheme of things over which I have no control, starting with these parents who are doing everything wrong, Starting with them, I have no control, much less a freedom to change anything about this life. No control. Here is this small child, no control at all. So the helplessness starts right at birth, really. The baby must be thinking of the good old days in the womb where it didn't have to make decisions and didn't have to be, it was in the programming of these laws. But then there is this process of individuation accompanying birth and continuing as the baby develops and grows. Now it was born, now it is 2. And a 2-year-old is like Ishvara. Mine, me, like our morning meditation. Everything is me, everything is mine, there's only me. Who are you? There's only me. Yeah, non-dual. That's what it is. It doesn't recognize any other ego. It hasn't, it just is all myself. This is all Satchidananda manifesting. You can see the 2-year-old and, it just rides roughshod over everyone. And it's just alone is me, mine. Everything is mine. It has to be right here, right for me. Who else can it be for? It must be for me. This is the thinking. This is what it is. So it is discovering itself as Ishvara, albeit in an inhibited way. And then, unfortunately, the sibling is born. Oh, what happened to me? And where did this other screaming thing come along? Big disappointment. And all the parents are cooing and gaga-gooing over this new thing. And I am this, on the shelf, left over, put aside. When I grow up, I'm going to become a bandit, just to show them. This is what the whole thing is. The disappointments start to come. First, it is all in all. And then it is forced to recognize this. It means this ego, this baby ego, this growing. Ego means the individuation process, the I-ness, the I notion that is developing. That's what ahankara, the I notion. That's what I mean by ego. Again, a very badly used, misused, overused word. So this individuating I notion is struck a blow on the head with the arrival of a sibling or another such disruption in its life where it thought it was king. It is forced to recognize that there are other egos. And as though this was not a big blow enough, some of these other egos are harmful to me. You see the difference? You see the alienation? This ego is a big ego and it's going to crush me. This one is a dangerous one that's going to decimate me. This one is okay, I can bully this one. And that one is also okay, neutral. But these other ones I have to stay away from. Defense mechanisms develop. What are defense mechanisms? Except mechanisms to separate in the name of protection, separate in the name of, survival from all those other astis, correct? Yeah. So each this becomes inimical to I, going with our earlier definition of this and I. Every idam I need to be aware of. And the parents don't help, because we live in complicated times. Don't, trust strangers, even if they have candy. Don't, especially if they have candy. Don't go here, don't do that. This one looks suspicious. So the child is not only having to figure out its own fears and ways of separating, it also takes in as a legacy the parental fears, the societal fears, the communal fears, the religious fears, the cultural fears, and it becomes a big bundle of exploding fear. That's all it is. Udaram mantaram kurute atathasya bhayam bhavati. Upanishad. Ut aram antaram kurute. The one that makes even the slightest bit of separation between I and this is consigned to sorrow and fear. That is the origin of fear. Separation causes fear, causes anxiety. That's why it's called separation anxiety. And so this frightened child, becomes an apron string wala, catches hold of the mother's sari all the time, going from room to room. And in its mind, the mother will protect, correct? Yeah. Mother will protect. Mother is God. Mother can do all kinds of things. Plus, mother tells me, shut up, I have to shut up. And mother is the source. So everything is helplessly attracted to the source. It goes and catches hold of the mother. And to bring in Pujya Swamiji's quintessential example, everything is going very well in this lovely world of this child, afraid, but has the mother to hold on to, until the mother sees a big cockroach. When the child says, cockroach, and tries to climb on the mother because it wants to be lifted up and held. Mother throws the child and climbs onto the table. Then the child goes searching after the father. The father just jumps and catches hold of the ceiling fan because the father is even more scared. Then the child is again disappointed. Not only afraid, but now insecure on top of the fear. There is great insecurity. And the insecurity is around the fact that not only I'm afraid, but I'm alone. Meaning what? Alienated from the source. That is when the search begins. A child thinks I'm searching for a balloon, but it is searching for a sense of connection. Yeah, because the balloon will also pop, just like its trust in the parents.
Is that why they cry? Oh my God.
And then it searches for more things. The thing that it is holding on to keeps shifting. First it is blankie, then it is, first it is that thing. What is that they put in the mouth? Pacifier. Yeah, from binky to blankie. And then, some toy. Some, teddy bear. In this country, people have teddy bears even when they are 50 years old. That was a big eye-opener to me when I first came into this country. Because I went to somebody's house and they said, I want to show you my house. I said, okay. So they showed me their bedroom, and in the bedroom there was all these big, big teddy bears, small teddy bears, and penguin and some crocodile, all these made of stuffed toys. There was no place for the person on the bed. The bed was full of And I was confused because I knew they were newly married, so I didn't think they had children. So I said, do you have children or are you taking care of a child? No, these are our toys. Then I said, oh, okay. That's how it is. So, the thing is that here, culturally, there is a permission to continue to have the teddy bear, forever, for however long one lives. There's a cultural permission. In India, that permission is not there. They will say, grow up. And even if a perfect stranger, if this incident had happened in India, a mere acquaintance is coming to your house and you're showing them the house and you have all these big teddy bears, and it is perfectly in the right of the mere acquaintance to take the teddy bears and throw them out and then have a talk with the couple and say, this just will not do, you both need to grow up. That's how that is different. In India, everyone, contributes in leading your life, whether you know them or not. There is everyone's contribution. But the point I'm trying to make is that this insecurity, which has been completely, which has been the immediate result of being let down by the mother and the father, because the mother and the father are eminently and happily fallible. They don't know what they're doing. Mother inconsistent, father unavailable. We love you, but we are not available, We love you, therefore shut up. Therefore, all these kinds of mixed messages contribute to the parents which were on a pedestal in the form of the trust of the child. The pedestal is dismantled. And after that, the child searches for something to hold on to. Binky, blanky, teddy, whatever it is, some stuffed toy. Or it becomes a little more sukshma. Sukshma means what? Subtle, as it grows up. Maybe it takes on to some, playing an instrument or a particular, subject of study or a pursuit, something like that. But that becomes its way of identifying. Because the identity, anyone's identity, as long as one has jivatvam, as long as one has this ignorance, anyone's identity is always relational. Who are you? No one says such a self-standing, propless, Sachidananda. No one will say that. People will always say, this is who I am. This is what I am connected to. This is who I am connected to. And if that connection is not there, this is what I do, because that is the connection. But that doesn't suffice. No matter how much one excels, the child keeps growing out of one addiction and growing into another. Because the object that the child wants to fuse with, the child jiva here, jiva baby jiva, whatever you want to say, the object that it wants to fuse with is finite. So therefore it has to drop it because it doesn't satisfy. In fact, it doesn't want to fuse with an object at all. What does it want to do? It wants to see itself as secure and not alienated. But it doesn't know. It's keeping on searching for the source. No, this is the source. That is the source. And even if it becomes a rebel and a rabble-rouser, it is still searching for the source. Still searching for the source. That source is what creates that missing. That missing is called alienation. That is what we have been talking about. Missing what? This is a very good question. Missing what? Binky? Blanky? Teddy? iPad? Yeah, as we grow, as one grows older, the addictions get not only more sophisticated, but unfortunately more expensive. Yeah. $30 Teddy and $300 phone. This is what it is. Think about your relationship to these so-called smartphones. You know? And think about your relationship to the Teddy. You'll be surprised at the similarities. Same thing. Teddy then, iPhone now. That's why they are all very ubiquitously named as iMac, iPhone. It should actually be called this phone because it belongs to the realm of this. It is not I. Purposely obfuscated. Because without the phone, I'm nothing. Without that, what is that? iPad. This tablet called iPad, I'm nothing. Without the Mac, I'm nothing. This is the perception. And in the West, we become highly skilled with these addictions that pass off as pastimes. They're very sophisticated. And they keep one in a status quo of ignorance and searching constantly. But still we haven't answered the question yet. What is one missing? What is one missing? The answer is Ishvara. This oneness with everything. This understanding, this connection with the whole. But you said I am the whole. Yes? And you said that everything asti, I asti, everything asti, asti, asti. There is no idam separate from aham. So how can I have separation? Because I don't know it. Because you don't know it. That is why the separation is there. It all comes down to cognition. That's why it's called recognizing this connection. It is there somewhere. That is why there is the missing. Because something is missing. I just don't have a name for it. I know something is missing. Except when I sleep. And except on those rare occasions when I'm not querulous, when I stop complaining. When do I stop complaining? I stop complaining. Yes, but occasionally when I'm awake also I stop complaining. Very, very occasionally. But when is that? Somebody said when all the desires are fulfilled. Is it possible for all the desires to be fulfilled? What are you talking about? In which town are you living? All desires can never be fulfilled. Okay, between the fulfillment of one desire and the arising of the next, in that small space, maybe I'm satisfied. No, because in that small space, more desires are coming. Oh, but I had this, but it wasn't good enough. I had that, but I want more, and I want this, and this is not okay. And sitting here, I have missed all the sales, So all these thoughts come. Yeah, all the balls and the malls and So many thoughts come in between two desires. Happiness has nothing to do with desires. Sometimes you just wake up happy. Why? Because somehow there is an accidental, replication of this connection. There's an accidental recognition or an experience of this connection because the judging person has gone to sleep. The non-judging, appreciative person is awake. One is awakened to that aspect of in oneself. In fact, that truth of oneself. When the guard is down. And when is the guard down? When I encounter something small, harmless, benign, and beautiful, in my opinion, in one's own opinion. Something small and furry. Not talking of hedgehog, but yeah, something small and furry. Even the person allergic to small and furry things will look at it from a distance and cannot help smiling. A flower. Even the hard-hearted person, given a flower, oh, thank you. Even the person may not even like flowers. Oh, thank you. The thought counts. Nature. Why? Because it is benign. It's not, the mountains are not coming out to get me. The river is not trying to make me into its food. It's not consuming me. The birds, the flowers, the trees, grass. Somebody told me I don't like grass in the class. I don't like trees either. Very rare. Generally, people don't have a problem with grass, trees, meadows, flowers, small furry things, babies, smiling, smiling children. These are all things that evoke in me that priyam, that pleased self that we have been talking about. Evoke, invoke means what? It wasn't there before? No, it was there before. It is just more blossomed or manifest in contact with these objects. Why these particular objects? Because they are not seen as harmful. They don't bring up the defense mechanism. When the defenses are down, I see the connection. I see the world as beautiful. I see the world. I have inhibited, albeit, a capacity to see the world as benign, to see this jagat as not harmful to me, as not always out to get me. The suspicion is down. Maybe after a stint of meditation, one goes out of the meditation room, goes out of the house, meets the pickpocket and gives the pickpocket a big hug, disarming the pickpocket also. So much so that forgets to pick the pocket. Happens. Happens. There was a story in the paper, in the local train in Mumbai. This woman was traveling, and this cut purse was hiding under the seat. Cut purse. One who cuts purses. Yeah. So, and he was hiding under the seat. Because the idea is the women will have big handbags that also just, hang out under the seat if they're holding it or if they're just, clutching it.
So a thief?
Yeah. Yeah, cut purse. It's not an American expression? Yeah, you've heard it? Yeah. Is it an English expression? No? Okay, maybe we use it in India all the time, because that's what it is. So this person, slit the purse, and downloaded the contents. Very. But also very compassionate, as the story goes. So, then some begging person they sing for a living and they go from compartment to compartment, and usually they are blind or missing a limb or something. This is how they just sort of get their money. And so this, troop of one begging person came, and she opened the zipper to look for the money, and he handed her a bill to give to this, and she didn't think much of it. And she did that, and pretty soon, 2-3 other, begging people came, and he kept handing her from inside. I think it was not that he was compassionate, he didn't want to be caught. He had his own self-interest. Then I think he got angry, he got mad, because he said, hey, all these people are taking everything away. And so next time when she put her hand, he just caught it and twisted the hand, because he was upset, he was angry. said, I'm not going to get anything. So anyhow, I was remembering that when we talked about the pickpocket. But you see, so there is this, there is this whole way in which we can laugh about things. When occasionally I can, despite the distrust, the mistrust, the insecurity, the fear, the alienation, occasionally I more than sense the connection. I am one with everything. I am the whole. And I can be very charitable. I can keep giving money, And so this is the whole trick of it, because these in between little pockets of my awareness of being connected with the whole become the basis for fueling this search for the whole. Because I have experienced it. I know what is possible, and I'm not going to settle for anything finite when I can have the infinite, when I am the infinite. This is the whole thing. This is what fuels the search. And so one is just a searching individual. Missing this, the presence. Missing that which is the author of all these laws. Missing that sense of connection with my source. That is what it is. That is what Ishvara is, the source. Whose source? Everyone's source, the source of everything. So therefore, you cannot ask the question, I said last night, who is Ishvara? Where is Ishvara? Not who. Where is Ishvara? Because to give a location for this source which includes me, nay, it is me, that is impossible, because this is not an object. This is the very subject. Ishvara is the subject that is never subject to objectification. That is what we say Ishvara is. That's why the first two letters of Ishvara is I-S. First letter of Ishvara? I. That's what it is. That is what the whole trick of this is. That I am missing something that I can never be away from. Can you go outside of Asti? No. Can you go outside of Bhati? No. Outside of Priyam? No. So the lament usually is, oh, I can't, I want to be one with Ishvara. I want to have a song and dance, cha-cha-cha with Ishvara. Yeah. I want to do this with Ishvara, I want to do that with Ishvara, a cup of tea with Ishvara. I'm not, I'm missing Ishvara. I'm not experiencing Ishvara. I'm not coming close to Ishvara. Okay. If you're not close to Ishvara, try something. Try going far away from Ishvara. Run. Running is Ishvara. The ground that I'm running on is Ishvara. The unknown destination that I'm about to reach, maybe a tree, is Ishvara. And what I'm running away from? Ishvara. The blowing wind that is helping the running, either a headwind or a tailwind, whatever it is, Ishvara. All the sights and sounds, Ishvara. And the stupid decision to go there, Ishvara. The stupid decision to run away, Ishvara. You can't run away. How can you go? This can become actually a meditation. Next time, sit down in meditation and say, let me go far away from Ishvara. Let me actually be disconnected. Let me meditate on how much alienated I can get. Then the bluff is called immediately. This is the jivas. Jiva is crazy. When you say, look for the connection, no, I'm alienated. Okay, look for the alienation. No, I'm connected. Loco. Yeah, totally. Crazy. So make this a meditation. Don't look for Ishvara. Get away from Ishvara. What has Ishvara done anyway? Always hiding, lurking behind everything, not showing herself, himself. Yeah. Not showing up even as me, in me, covering even me with ignorance. I don't want to have anything to do with you. You trickster. I'm going far away from you. You Mayik being. I'm going far away. Try going far away. Goer is Ishvara. Destination is Ishvara. The ditch I fall into, Ishvara. Running is Ishvara. The decision to run, Ishvara. Yeah, it's all within this order. Everything is this vast, intelligent order, all knowledge, everything. It's just fantastic. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. You cannot boost this connection and say, I am more connected to Ishvara than you. That would be lie. That would be a lie. One can perhaps say, I am more aware of my connection to Ishvara now than I was before. That's a different thing. But you cannot say, I am more connected and you are less connected. What is the difference between awareness and oneself? Nothing. This is what the whole thing is. So therefore, what is this alienation? It is whenever I miss the presence of this connection called Ishvara, the total, in my life. Whenever I miss this oneness, whenever I miss this security that comes from being connected. And whenever I'm using the word I, I'm talking of this consciousness that is identified with the body-mind-sense complex, conditioned as it were by the body-mind-sense complex, obtaining as it were in the body-mind-sense complex. So with reference to the body-mind-sense complex, there is alienation. With reference to Satchidananda, if I say I am that which is, the source of the mountains, how can there be alienation? All there is I. That we are, embodied as one is in a body-mind-sense complex. One is at the same time living two realities. Which are the two realities? Paramarthika, Vyavaharika. Yeah. One is inhabiting two realities. The transactional realities of pickpockets and cut purses and, all these things. And the absolute reality where nothing of this matters. Yeah. The Upanishad also acknowledges this. That's why we have the imagery of the two birds, correct? Living on one tree. A tree is this body. Yeah. Branched out. Flower, fruit. This is the tree. My own, total samsara, right here. This is the tree. The bird indwells the tree. How many? Two. Two birds? No, one. But then why are you saying two? Because that is how it feels. The alienation makes the one impossibly into two. Somehow, by a strange feat of mathematics, one becomes two. That is frequently the case when one is inebriated. Yeah. In India we don't have, at least in the smaller towns and villages, we don't have this breathalyzer test. So if somebody is driving badly on the road and the policeman will make them get down from the vehicle and say, how many fingers? Moving it really fast. This is a very sure test, I'm told. And the person says, 2. And then his vehicle, a bullock cart, is immediately confiscated. And impounded. Of course, the police department has to feed the bullocks. So really, what is jivatvam? What is jivahood? Jivatvam means jivahood. The status of being a jiva is inebriation. Yeah. That's what it is. Inebriation on the drink of everything finite. OD'd on idam, searching still for aham, the person sees two in place of one. This is what it is. The Upanishad also says, chalo chodo, let them be. This is where this is only when they will start coming to class, when we acknowledge the two. If we keep saying everything is one, the poor Vedanta teachers will have nothing to do. So therefore, ritam pibantau, two people have entered a cave, a dark cave, and are drinking together. A cocktail of good and bad karma. Kathopanishad. Two? No, only one. Then why are you saying two? One is the light, the other is the shadow that it casts. The shadow being of the one who is alienated, the one who is alone, the one who is lonely, the one who is mistrustful and distrustful. Dvau suparnau sayujau sakhayau. Another Upanishad says, Mundaka Upanishad. Two birds, great friends, embracing all the time, sitting on a tree. One of them is, goes berry picking. Yeah. That's why that same vritti is still there. Goes berry picking and finds some of them not very delicious. Yeah? Not at all delicious. Some of them are sour, some of them are overripe, some of them are astringent, some of them are unripe. And still searching for the sweet berry. And if they are such great friends, both of them go berry picking. No. The other one just watches and shines on. Abhichakashi, chakastra deeptau, shines. Shines on. In fact, it lends its shine for the one that is hopping up and down from one branch to another, searching for berries and missing the berries. What it is missing is itself. What it is missing is the Ishvara bird, which is really itself. This is what is happening here. So this traversing these two realities simultaneously gives a lot of headaches and makes one need the Tylenol of Vedanta because that's the only way it will go. That's the only cure. Yeah, this is the aspirin of samsara. So, this is what the whole thing is. So when I say I, when I am missing, the I, what I'm talking about is the bird that is berry picking, not the bird who is looking on. So this too is tentative. Even I know that. Everyone knows that. Actually it is one, but right now I feel separated. That separation makes the one into two. Because I am intoxicated by the finite, an overdose of the finite. That's what it is. Enter the 12-step program. Really? Yeah. First, the acknowledgement, I am a samsahara-lik. Yes. I am addicted to samsara. Samsara is this mess in which one finds oneself. The scheme of things is not samsara. The scheme of things, plus my own disappointment and unmet expectations, immediately it's converted into samsara. But yet I cannot leave this behind and turn to myself. I'm still addicted to this. Samsara-holic. One has to acknowledge, I am a samsara-holic. I need help. Yes. This is the 12th step. Just like the 12th step, same thing. I need help. And that is when the teaching, the Guru, the Upanishad, the Bhagavad Gita, all of them walk in because they are the de-addicting measures, de-alienating measures. Because really, if one is convinced that one is alienated when one is not, it is not a reality. It's a hallucination. That's what it really is. To make matters worse, it's not that one is only negotiating between two realities. Unfortunately, there is a third reality. I hesitate to even call it reality. A third non-reality that inserts itself as completely real. What is that? Pratibhasikam, also known as my own subjective reality. When the subjective reality increases, meaning I no longer see what is, I see what is not, because that's what I'm capable of seeing. But how can you see what is not when you are missing what is? What is Ishvara. But if I'm alienated, I'm seeing what is not. But what is this what is not? What is not is what I wished for it to be, how I want it to be, how it should have been in my perception. All this is what is not. When the what is not overpowers what is, it's I am projecting. I am also projecting, just like Ishvara here. I'm projecting my own private hell onto a series of benign asthibhati priyam. I'm contaminating them with the outburst of my ignorance. That's what it is. That's why I'm contaminating them with my projection of raga and dvesha, my likes and dislikes. That's why the things keep changing. The same person is very wonderful, cute, lovable. 6 months later, what? I don't like you anymore. Yeah. We have to take space. We are incompatible. We cannot live together. What happened 6 months ago? No, that was then. Even the slightest interrogation the person doesn't do, perhaps it's me. The raga dveshas are enshrined as the absolute reality. In fact, they are the most fleeting relative things. When the relative is confused for the absolute becomes relative. That's why, you invite the person to class. No, I have other priorities. Absolute becoming relative. What is your priority? I have to go see some relatives, That's all. So when the relative is enshrined falsely elevated to the level of the absolute becomes relative. The absolute is not taken seriously. That is when, the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita makes an appearance to get one out of this almost impossible situation, almost being the operative word. Nearly impossible situation. Of course it is, we are in a stalemate, a stagnation. What would have been a stagnation but for this mantra, this verse. And what is the stagnation here? I'm reproducing the same thing. I'm reproducing the addiction to the finite while still looking for the infinite. I'm unable to let go of the finite. Plus I'm projecting my own fears and tears on this world. I'm unable to appreciate it for what it is, sans my own expectations and my own desires. This is a stalemate, it's reproducing itself. This verse can be seen as an intervention. Yeah, it's an intervention. How how to get out of this stagnation. Already there are so many projections, correct? I'm unwanted, I'm not good, I'm not good enough, nobody loves me, I'm not included in anything, I'm alienated. This is projections regarding the I. Then there are projections regarding the idam also. This is not good. This is a waste of time. This is an idiot. And this one I don't like. This one I like lesser still. And why does this one exist? This is my own projection. This is my own subjective projection. And the best way to resolve the projection is to create one more. Yeah. Through proper thinking. This is a strategy. Through proper thinking. To create one more. Not a subjective one, but understanding this objectively. So here I am creating an altar that will accept all these projections. An altar that is an absolute altar. The altar that enshrines, as it were, the absolute, so that it can take my projections away. This is what the whole thing is. That is why the altar, we don't say that we are, worshipping images. No. We don't say we are worshipping some icon. No. We are worshipping that which is the most worshipful within the I, as the I. That's all it is. But it is projected outwards because I'm incapable of seeing my own glory and beauty. That Ishvaratvam in me I'm unable to access. First there is ignorance, and as a result of this ignorance there is, all kinds of projections, personal projections. So I'm unable to appreciate my connection with everything. I'm unable to appreciate how benign everything is. Therefore I help myself by creating an altar for myself to surrender these projections. Because it's only when I'm free of these projections can I appreciate what is in me and in everything else. So therefore, that is what Ishvara is. That is what the worship is. That is what surrender is. It is not some kind of a collective, affirmation of some faith or some creed. That's not what this is about. For the Hindu, the worship is always a private affair. There can be 500 people in the temple. Each one is relating personally. This is what is the beauty of it. It's a relationship with the Absolute. But how can I have a relationship with the Absolute when I am Absolute? Well, do you know you're Absolute? Absolutely not. So therefore, we need, like I told you in the first day, this is presented, this connection, this regaining this connection, recognizing this connection is presented through various steps. Through various steps. It's a step-by-step process. Because this is something I have to walk and backtrack, lifetimes worth of my own projections. It may not take time, but it's going to take some effort to be at least pointed in the right direction. So therefore I have an altar of surrender. And even if I don't have an altar of surrender, I see everything that is here as an altar of surrender. That requires a little more emotional growth and spiritual maturity. Therefore it's better to have a specific place, an altar of surrender. That's why in our iconography, all the deities are smiling. No one goes like this. This is not a mudra. This is not how you will find. Yeah, wagging the finger wagging Bhagavan. Bhagavan. Disappointed Bhagavan. I have a headache. Why? Because you came into the shrine room. Angry Bhagavan. Yeah, you did the arati wrong. Watch out. Watch out. I'm ticked off, and I have ticked off this in your account. I'm going to come and get you. I'm going to send Lord Yama after you. You don't have that. All the Bhagavans have something, all the manifestations, all the deities have something in common. They are all smiling. They don't have frowning faces. They all look relaxed and happy, if not happy, benign. And then the hand is like this. Yeah, a blessing hand. Or if they are holding something, it's something nice like a flower or something you like to look at. Or some laddu they are holding. Yeah, Ganesha holds one laddu. Yeah, all sweet things they are holding. They are holding weaponry sometimes, but it is for my own protection. And the hand is like this, the blessing hand. Why does it bless? Because it says, I grant you freedom from fear. This is Abhaya Mudra, Abhaya Hasta. I grant you total freedom from fear. From what? From me. No longer need you be afraid of me or my laws or my dress, my grand cloak, which of course is a little off-putting, I can understand, but there is no need to be afraid of its grandeur, because that grandeur is you. You are unable to see it in yourself. So I invite you to see it in me. This is a gradual and a very wonderful process. This is what worship is. Manmana bhava. May you be one whose mind is never away from me. If you haven't figured it out, I'm taking a little extra time. So just to let you people, online people know. Yeah. So may you be the one whose mind is never away from me. Ayyo. Then I have to keep thinking of God, God, God. In the middle, dog comes because of the proximity of the letters. And then dog displaces God. And then I have to shake my head and then bring back God. And then dog comes again because I'm thinking of my dog. And then that dog comes. And sometimes you know what happens? The very thing that you don't want to think of keeps coming. Yeah. Then varieties of dogs come. I'm having an internal dog show, The Scottish dog, the sheep dog, this dog, that dog, the yippy dog, what is that called? The other one. The Chihuahua dog, that is the pocket dog, The riding dog, the Great Dane, and then the Pomeranian dog. Yeah, I'm having a dog show. Why? Because this is how the mind is. Because that's just how the mind is. Whatever I don't want to think about only comes. Ayyo, what to do? And what is the fix that Lord Krishna has put me into by saying, Manmana bhava, may you be one whose mind is never away from me. There's a secret there. We've already, discussed it. Yatra yatra mano yati, tatra tatra ishvaraha. Yeah, wherever the mind goes, what do you encounter? Object. And what is behind the object? Subject. Tree. What is tree? Leaf, trunk. Each thing goes into a million branches. It branches out literally. And even a leaf you take, chlorophyll, cellulose, so many things. Yeah, the leaf has its own, and if one is a botanist, you can find more parts to add. And then you look at the intelligence behind how this is put together. That knowledge. Tree is knowledge, leaf is knowledge, the orange seed is knowledge. That it matures at a certain time is knowledge. That knowledge is nothing other than Ishvara. So you see, you don't have to sit and, think of, because this is the mistake one makes. This is why the rebellion against Ishvara. Because Ishvara is seen as some big object. There are all these objects, and Ishvara is one more object that I have to keep thinking about. Oh my God, I don't have the time to think about Ishvara because I'm thinking about all these other things. Whatever you think of, let the mind go anywhere. Cognize the object and cognize the cognizer as coming out of that, arising out of that same consciousness in the form of object thought. Every thought you see has two variables, two aspects. One is the invariable aspect and the other one is variable. Pot. Variable or invariable? Variable, because pot can be replaced by spatika, crystal, variable, and then mic, computer, variable. But then there is something invariable. What is that? That consciousness, that awareness, that I is invariable. Who is the thinker? I. The thinker also resolves into I. That which is thought of resolves into I. This is all Ishvara. So now we see that the man mana bhava has a very different meaning. It's not that you keep thinking of God and keep shaking the head because non-God elements come. God is not an object to be enclosed in a thought like even a dog or a pot or a flower. Not possible. You have to go a little further and see that thinker, thought, and the object of the thought are all one, rising from that same awareness, sustained by that same awareness, which is I. That is Ishvara. Man mana bhava. May your mind never be away from me. No, but I don't experience that. I already gave you a trick. Try going away from that. Run away from Ishvara as fast as you can. And then you will find that you are closer still. Man mana bhava. That is what the understanding is. More we'll see in half an hour, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, right? Yeah. So 10 o'clock our time is the next class, the concluding class. And after that we'll have feedback from the people about what people learnt and what people enjoyed, etc. So we will have that as well. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.